Hey y'all, on today's episode, we have our friend and alumni of Impact Recovery and also our head of admissions, Mr. Josh Dikis. So tune in. Thanks. Hey guys, welcome to Impacting Recovery Uncensored. I'm your host, Sarah Pritchard. This is a podcast where we dive deep into real, uncensored truths about addiction, recovery, and everything in between. But we do no sugarcoating and have no judgment, just honest conversations that can help make an impact and lift up the solution. So let's get started. Today we have our good friend and admissions specialist, Mr. Josh Dikis, who also is an alumni of Impact Recovery. How's it going?
It's going good. Excited to be here, see what it's about.
Yeah. I'm glad you're here. I think there's going to be a lot of people that can resonate with your experience. And you know, we've known you for a while and worked with you for a while, but Josh, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your experience and how you got connected to Impact in the first place.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I was living with my folks, and I had tried countless treatments before, and it was around Christmas. Actually, it was Christmas, the day after Christmas, and my brother came in town and had been living with my parents, and he said instantly, as soon as he saw me, he told him something's wrong. Something's off. I know. My dad was like, no way. And so they went and searched my room. Nevertheless, I had an intervention done on me, and prior to that, we had tried different, I had relapsed a handful of times in the 3 years I was living with them, and we had tried different things. Wrote a contract, and drug tests, and all these things. And basically, because I kept telling my dad, like, nothing works. Yeah. There's nothing out here that can actually provide me the opportunity to be drug and alcohol free.
Well, and did any of that look appealing to you, to be drug and alcohol free?
No, it didn't. I was at the point where I was just like, I'm okay with this, and I'll just keep everybody at bay just enough to where I can be accepted and be considered part of the family.
Yeah.
Which is weird to say now, you know?
Just to exist.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And just be okay with that misery.
Yeah.
So they did an intervention on me, and honestly, when they did the intervention, I have to add this in there, that they brought me down to talk with my mother's family counselor that she was working with, and said this was the first time in many years that my brother had been in town and some things like that. The whole family came together, and they said we wanted you to tell her how you think it went. I was like, yes, of course I can do that. Right. Like, thank you for giving me this honor. So they do the intervention on me, and basically my dad told me, you have 15 minutes to get everything out the house, or you can come check out this place called Impact. And I was like, what do you mean? You're sending me to treatment again? It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Long story short, he convinced me to come up there, and Adams was there that day. We did like a visit, and he sat down and he said some real things, some things that I had told my family before, but just never really like exactly how and why, right?
So when you said he told you things, like things around addiction,
yeah.
like explaining things to you that you had never heard.
Absolutely. Like, really, most importantly, the no choice piece. Mm-hmm. That there's this no choice, that this is what I'm going to do. And then that, really the step one explanation of mind, body, spirit kind of thing. And when we left there, I was like, see, Dad, like, we're good. I don't have a choice.
Yeah.
You can't send me to treatment because clearly he just told you that I don't have a choice.
Right.
And I'm sure that during that conversation, Adams talked about a solution, but I didn't hear that piece.
Yeah.
So we left, and I was really about the place, like deep down inside. I didn't vocalize that to my family. Like, yeah, this is kind of a cool place to go. It's a nice, open, cool environment. They used the term laid back about 100 times, and that was important to me. So I still wasn't going to go. On the way home in our 40-minute drive, I was like looking up apartments to see where I could find one in 15 minutes, And at the time, my girlfriend then, my wife now, I was talking to her. I was like, can you believe they did an intervention on me? And she knew some of the stuff that has taken place. And I was like, they want to send me away for 42 more days. And bless her heart, because she's truly the reason that I ended up going to Impact. She said, why would you not want to go somewhere for 42 days to be a better person? I was just like, hold up, you think I should go? So that's how I got connected with Impact, right? Like, so that's when I made the decision, like, you know what? If she thinks I should go, my gosh.
I guess there's really something to this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if we back up a little bit, so you mentioned you had gone to treatment before,
Mm-hmm.
and you're originally from Birmingham.
Mm-hmm.
And so did you go throughout the country? Did you go to places more than once or different places?
Yeah, I mainly stayed in Birmingham, in Alabama. Looked into and left some places early, right? Out. So I can't really say I attended.
Yeah.
But yeah, mainly just Alabama.
Yeah. And not that matters, but I'm always just curious to know, because I think we all have, especially everyone on the team, we all have different stories about our treatment experience, our journeys, all of that. Because, I only went to treatment once.
Yeah, see, that's weird to me.
Yeah.
That's like when you were saying that, I'm like, of course this is important,
Right.
Because of just truly what the message is at Impact is just so different. And I think that's what helped me while I was at Impact, was to hear these people that have been different places, and especially Adams, and see that, oh my gosh, like, look how he's living. I want to do that.
Yeah. And you are a father,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a younger child, but you also have your oldest, who you had when you were coming through Impact. Tell me what that was like, when you being a father, and you mentioned you just wanted to
I wanted, I guess I'll say this. There was a day when I was just like, I didn't know what all I had taken. And I remember recording a video for my son. Actually, it was a voiceover on the iPhone. And just telling him, like, I love you and all these types of things. Like, listen to your mom and all this. And when I stopped, most people would, like, have deleted that and been done with it. But, like, I was just okay with that. But my relationship with him and that dynamic was, I wanted to be a father, right? And I have a great father, and I wanted to I thought I was going to be able to mimic that, but I couldn't. And I'll never forget when he was born, there was this bright idea that was like, you got to be a good father, so you got to increase your use.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that made sense. My family, when I tell them that kind of stuff, they're just like, what?
Right.
But to be a good father, that's what I told myself, and I listened to it, and that's this disease talking to me. And so I tried, I existed with him. I was there for him, and I provided safety and everything, food and things that he needed. But I don't have very many memories.
Yeah. Well,
of that.
And how, I'm glad you mentioned that, because just the other day I heard a friend talking about how he was like, I had to get high to change diapers.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But to a normal drinker or a normal person, that does not make sense to them. And it's just what we got to do to get by.
Yeah. And it goes back, you can reverse that and say, you mean back then, you can dad without a substance?
Right.
Like, really?
Yeah.
People do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. And because that was me not being a dad, but just like life. Like, you can do life without a substance.
Right.
I don't know what that means.
Me either. Yeah.
And I think that is something that was really scary for me and for a lot of other people, maybe yourself, of just like looking at a world with no substances, nothing. Like, you're telling me nada?
I'm not going to be able to get out the bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah. And so you got to Impact.
Yeah.
And what was that like?
I love that question, actually. You're driving down this gravel driveway. Now, mind you, I had just been visited like 4 days before.
Right.
I forgot that,
Yeah.
and I'm driving down and I remember looking at my dad like, where are you taking me? Like, this is awesome. Like, look at this place. It's a cool barn and all this. And, yeah, nevertheless, it kind of hit me right then that like, man, this is probably this. We'll see what can happen. I need to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And like early on, I'll tell you what, like I didn't think anything still at that point. I didn't think anything would work. I didn't really care to listen. Well, maybe I should say that wrong. I said that wrong. I listened, but I didn't think it would work for me.
Yeah.
I see these guys, and I think it's so important about impact, and I tell families a lot, but these guys were up there living exactly what they were telling me. And over time, after like a couple weeks, I remember looking at them like, man, these guys are really happy.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are actually free, and I wonder if it will work for me. I asked, it was, I think John was there, Chad and Colby and Jacob. And I said, y'all have to be smoking weed. Y'all, there's no way people laugh like this without something. And they just said, yes, absolutely, you can.
Yeah.
I'll show you how.
Yeah.
And I just remember that, like, okay, let me see if I can do what they're doing.
Yeah. And so do you remember during your time there if there was like a moment of clarity?
So I tell people all the time, I was the guy that was getting asked to come into the office like every day, sometimes more than once a day.
Yeah.
It's not like I was doing just real troublesome stuff, but I just was stuck in that old way, and they were trying to point it out to me and use examples, and I'm just like, dude, y'all aren't making sense, And I'll never forget, there was a time, I think it was about 2 weeks in, and they sat me down and had a very, eye-opening conversation around this idea that my dad doesn't see me as a man.
Mm-hmm.
And it bothered me. How come he doesn't treat me as a man?
Right.
And my mentor was Jacob. And he said, Josh, let me tell you something, because you're the furthest thing from a man. If you do this work, you can build yourself into a man with God's help. And I was just like, oh, man. And then I still did some stupid things after that. But then I walked back in one day and he said something to me, and I started asking the question, like, what do you mean? How do I do this differently?
Right.
When they would point out some of my old behaviors, my egotistical and selfish behaviors, at one point that eye-opening, like, okay, let's do this, was when I started asking, like, well, what else? How else do you do whatever you were talking about?
Yeah. Well, and and you may not know the answer to this, but what do you think, or why do you think the reason was that you were actually like engaging with them versus like your dad being like, you're not a man, like be a man kind of thing?
That's a good question. I think it was just the optimistic examples that they were providing. Like, if you do this, this will happen. Right. So it gave me that sense of hope.
Yes.
And that was the biggest piece. They would point things out to me and tell me these hard truths that I kind of hurt my feelings, But I didn't really attach to that because I've never really experienced feelings.
Yeah.
So it didn't really bother me that much. I was just kind of like, who are you telling me this?
Right.
But they would hit me with the hard truth and then show me usually something referenced in the book or their experience to say, hey, look, man, like, this is how you can not do that anymore.
Yeah.
Right? That was a big turning point.
Yeah, yeah. And it's all coming from a place of love.
Yes.
And I think what is so amazing about just being in a recovery community or impact is like they get it. Yeah. We all get it. We're all in the same boat here with this whole, we've all been there.
Yes.
And so it makes it a little bit easier to open up and to be a little more curious about like, okay, so you are laughing and you're sober. Maybe that I could too. Yeah. Maybe I'm interested to know how to do that.
Yeah. And you touched on a very important piece, the love behind it. I think that's the biggest piece to the puzzle. Why I was so like the happiest I've been in such a long time when I got asked to work at Impact because of that, just that love, that passion around trying to help somebody. And that's really what I felt when Jacob sat me down, told me these hard truths and said, here's how you can do different. Do you trust me? And even everybody up there allows for themselves to be trusted, right? The way they speak, the way they engage with people. And that was something that I never had really done that. And I just felt comfortable with Jacob and allowing myself to be vulnerable to an extent early on.
Yeah. And so you mentioned your family, and I am lucky enough to know your parents, and you know, they're amazing people. What was their experience like while you were at Impact and after? And
Yeah.
I guess your girlfriend at the time.
Yep, Rachel.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So, you know, my family going in, I caused a lot of separation in my whole family, my immediate family, right? My brother, my mom, and my dad. I didn't even see it. Of course not. But it was just full, you know, my mom was full of tears, probably questioning herself. My dad was always staring me in the eyes, not just to say, hey, as you look at somebody in the eyes.
Yeah.
My brother and I's relationship was just kind of there. We were brothers. And Rachel, I mean, she was always accepting. She just knew something wasn't right.
Yeah.
You know, and we would get into some discussions about it that would turn into arguments on my side being defensive.
Right.
While I was at Impact, this was a huge opportunity for my parents to learn some things, right? When the specialists call the family and give them updates and provide that in like a summarized view of what step they're on, that helped my both my parents so much, but really my dad. You know, he was able to get on a level playing field for the first time, or the closest thing to it.
Yeah.
It allowed, too, probably for some empathy. I think he's told me that before, that there's a little bit more empathy involved looking back on it. And so when I had some family sessions when I was there. I actually got asked to do phase 2 a couple times. How dare y'all?
How dare you?
You know, but it was a huge turning point because one time, the second time I was asked to do it again, it was mainly from my parents suggesting it and hoping for it, and Jacob presented it to me, and I remember sitting in a room with my mom and my dad, and I probably said a cuss word, and I was like, "How could y'all? Never!" And I stood up and I said that. And by the time I sat down, I said, "Okay, I'll do it." You know, my dad gave me a big hug. And he said, I'm doing this because I love you.
Aww.
And I care about you.
Yeah.
It was probably more difficult for Rachel, though. You know, mind you, I'm not around as much. We were around each other a lot, you know,
right.
like almost 3, 4, 5 times a day. I wasn't there. And this relationship, it's like, but she was so supportive.
She was.
She went to the family thing where y'all met, and that was big for her to really get an understanding of a deeper dive, because this was her first experience with this, you know? And I think at the time we had been together, I hope she doesn't see this, like maybe 3 or 4 years. I don't know how long. But
typical guy.
That's it. That's it. But we had been together for quite some time, and just, you know, I gave her my history, of course, but this was kind of her first time it was difficult for her because of that extended time in phase 2, but she appreciates it so much now. She literally told me just a couple days ago, I don't know how you can come to me and own up some things when we get in a disagreement, or when there's some struggles that we're going through, how you can sit the way you do. And I'm just like, wow, she's telling me this.
Yeah.
You know, are you sure you're supposed to be telling me this?
Right.
You know, so it really helped her see that. And when y'all had that family session and Adams was giving his spill, it was very, very beneficial. And I think it allowed for them to give me enough grace for the relief to really take hold, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And I just remember meeting everyone there, all 3 of them, and in particular Rachel, because I was just like, what a supportive girlfriend. Like, what
Yeah.
a great girlfriend.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. She
to
was.
show up and go. And that's why I love when we do those, because you get to see the families, and the other families get to kind of, mingle with each other and that sort of thing. But I also like how you mentioned the empathy piece, and how your family was like, we can empathize a little more. My sister said the same thing. Like, when she learned a little bit more about addiction and alcoholism and what we're going through, then they do have more empathy.
Yeah.
Because if not, they're just really angry and scared.
Yeah. And like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure this was presented to you too. There was many conversations where it's like, how could you choose alcohol or drugs over your family, or over this, or do this? And at that time I had no idea. And I'm like, I'm not.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can say.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's a very important piece, is how Impact allows for the family to get a little deeper dive into the situation itself and the disease.
Yeah. And so after your second month of phase 2, or a few months of phase 2, you started helping us out, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of how that progression went.
Yeah. You want to know something funny? I maybe have told Chad this. I remember before I started having that opportunity to help y'all out. And I remember thinking one day, like, me and Adams have so much in common, but how come he never talks to me? Like, why? What am I doing that? And what I realized is I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And he's out here helping these other guys, and I'm in self-pity because we're not communicating as much as I thought. And when he came to me and he was like, yeah, we'd like you to help, I was just like, oh my gosh, my eyes have been opened, and I apologize. I was like, dude, I am sorry. I haven't approached you because I've been kind of like mad at you.
Yeah.
But now I see what you've been doing, and you're doing exactly what I want to do.
Yeah.
And thank you for that opportunity.
Yeah. Yes, that's so funny. And you were just kind of helping out with all sorts of stuff.
Yeah,
and
I was a cook for quite some time.
Yeah.
Picking up rides, doing a lot of driving around. I think Chad once told somebody, this is our Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
Back in that time.
Right.
And I was appreciative. It meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
It really was. It helped me a lot.
Yeah. And now you're our admission specialist, and so you are on the phone with families all day long. What does, I guess, a day in the life look like?
Yeah.
In your role now?
Yeah, I mean, it starts pretty early. Those phones, they ring. You don't get to turn them off or on, right?
Yeah.
So I'll jump up pretty quick and get back on the phone. Some things early on the way to the facility. Usually I'll go to the facility 3 or 4 times a day. And after a group or something, jump on the phone, whatever needs to be handled. And really, it's just I love it because it's really an opportunity to do something that matters, and it doesn't stop. Like, I don't have a problem. I'm sure Rachel might, but when the phone rings late, like, I love being able to answer that phone and be there for somebody that needs some help, because I was in that position before.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we're on the phones. I'm on the phone pretty much all throughout the day and late into the evening, and then jump right back up and at it again.
Do it all again. Yeah. And I love how you mentioned, when you jump out of a group, because we all do groups out at Impact, which I think is pretty unique for a facility. It's just we'll all jump in and do a group whenever we need, because we do have individualized groups in the morning, and depending on where everybody's at, we may need, extra helpers or whatever. So you do mainly admissions, but you also do a lot of groups and then help out still wherever too.
That's right.
But you mentioned the laid back community when you were at Impact. How is that different from some other places you had gone versus, like what did that look like, or why was why was Impact more appealing?
Yeah, I mean, in reality, like some of these other places you go and you sit through groups like 6-8 hours a day, you can't even realize you leave one group and you don't even know what you did.
Yeah.
For one. And two, like, I thought it was so nice just to be able to have some breathing room.
Mm-hmm.
Look, we're coming in. I came in with everything around me burning.
Yeah.
And I don't realize it. And then when that drugs and alcohol are removed, those things and those feelings and emotions start to pop up. But if you put me through group all over and over and over, then I don't really have that opportunity. I love how the office open door policy truly is.
Yeah.
You can come in there and hang out, or you can, get called in there quite a bit,
Right.
but still have a very loving and friendly environment to work through and ask questions. I think it's important that there is some time to relax when we're coming in and getting ready to embark on this new opportunity, this experience. And that's what I appreciated the most was I was told before I came in that we are going to provide you a solution, and it's the authentic 12 steps. And you're going to have one main 12-step group a day. And whatever group step you're on, you're going to be on it a couple times with different people teaching it. And it really what it was like, these guys are serious. They're telling me this is proof that this works.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to sit through groups for 6-8 hours a day. You do this work. You do the work that's required of you, and you have an opportunity to experience it. That's what that laid back part is.
Yeah. And I was just curious because, some people have never been to treatment or, and so, and I think that we're small makes it a little bit more laid back too. But, so going back to, when you're on the phones with families and everything like that, what if there is a family member looking for a loved one and calling around, what is something or some things they should be asking that is important?
Yeah, that's a good question. So through my experience specifically, but I think it's important that what is the loved one going to be doing while he's at the facility? In that, that residential period, what's he going to be doing when he's there? And what I really mean by that is, are you going to provide him an opportunity to have a solution while he's at your facility or at that facility? Or is he going to have to go and sit through like these groups to change a perspective and do all these other things and, change your people, places, place, and then get out and go into a recovery circle and try to get a solution provided then, I think that's huge. That's very important. Like, what are we doing while we're there?
Right.
Kind of some of the specifics. And then also, what is the expectation once he completes this program, right? Like, the expectation is important because it's basically, here's the purpose of why he would come to this facility or to Impact, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I mentioned this before, but I think something that is unique is that whenever we're talking to families, we're talking about them helping somebody else. Yeah. And I would love to hear your perspective on the feedback you get from families when you're like, hey, I know your son's in active addiction right now, but we're going to need him helping other addicts.
Yeah. What does Adam say? We're going to change the world and we need him to do it.
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear because you have these families that are on the other end in like crisis mode, and then you're sitting there and telling them we're going to prepare them to have an opportunity to really get outside of themselves and carry this message to someone else that's in their position as well. So many times, I honestly, now that you ask it, families are like, he really needs to do that. All he does is things for himself, or all he does is avoid others, and I want him to get out there and be a part of the community. I want him to go out here and feel like he has a purpose. And what a better purpose than to go out there and carry the message and help another addict alcoholic.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes. So as far as the most, I guess, rewarding part of working at Impact, what would you say it is?
Yeah, I love this question. I could go on and on and on, and I'll try to keep it short.
I know.
But first and foremost, I enjoy the people that I get to work with. The people that I get to work with are doing exactly what I'm doing. We all have the same idea as to what we want impact to be and the message that we're portraying to our clients. That's the biggest piece. I don't think you get that rarely in any industry, much less, the addiction industry. So that's a huge piece. The most rewarding piece to this puzzle is really interacting with the families in crisis mode and giving them an opportunity to kind of, I can give them the opportunity to see hope, to see that something, we can do something for your son and we can help him, and give them that glimpse that things can be different, that they can, as my dad always says, they can have their son back.
Aww.
Yeah. I think that's huge.
That's amazing.
Love that piece.
Yes. Okay. Last thought. What do you think has helped you most in your recovery?
Well, I don't think you can really answer that question without saying something about a relationship with God, right? And the opportunity that I had at Impact and working this program of action and having men around me that are doing it and showing me, and this community has been a big piece to that, right? I have an opportunity with this program it provides me help in all areas of my life, whether it's dealing with just life's typical struggles that most people and they kind of pull their hair out.
Yeah.
I don't have to do that, because there's parts to this program where I can just sit back that direct me to God, and then I have some light shined on it. I heard this thing once. It was, God doesn't give you an extra day to live because you need it. God gives you an extra day to live because someone else does. And just thinking that and having an opportunity to actually live that, like, get out of here. I'd have never thought that I could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that so much. Well, is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
I don't know. I'll say this. What's really unique about Impact to me is the employee makeup, right? We have all done and are doing everything that we're going to ask clients to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that is such a strong piece to this puzzle, because, like you mentioned already, we've all been there.
Yeah.
And if we haven't done exactly what you've done, the guy right beside me has.
Right.
And I just love how we come together, and it's just awesome. It's a really cool opportunity, and I love my life today because of it.
Yeah. It's just, we're a family.
Yeah. It truly is. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
It means a lot. And thank you for tuning in to this episode of Impacting Recovery Uncensored. I hope today's conversation has inspired you, opened your mind, maybe even your heart, and hopefully given you a sense of hope. But remember, you're not alone. If you found this episode helpful, share it with someone that needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe and like and follow us on social so you never miss an episode. But until next time, keep making an impact. Bye, y'all.